We're going to treat the 86 question a little bit like overtime when it comes to football.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great time, team huddle, get your thoughts together, and just know the game isn't over yet. The test is not over yet. There's still hope. I'm getting chills.
I know.
We could have a victory, and we just need a little bit more time on the playing field or in the testing environment to determine your outcome. On today's episode, we are covering why the 86 question is not the end of the world. There's still a chance for victory. This is the Nursing Navigator.
Nursing Navigator's here. Wipe away those study tears. Hurst Review's got your back. Listen close. Stay on track.
Okay, Ashley, I know when we talk about 85 questions, everybody gets really excited, but I want to go one step further, one question further to the 86th question on the NCLEX, because I know that can probably create a lot of anxiety for students, but we know that it's not the end of the world and that there's still a lot of hope when it gets to question 86 and beyond. I'm curious your take on this. And before we get into that, let's quickly bring our listeners up to speed on just the format of the NCLEX.
For sure. And so maybe we just start with like the basics of the test. Okay, first, everybody has to take it. It is a safety exam. This is the way that we get our license and prove to the NCLEX people that we're safe and ready to practice nursing. And so when it comes to the actual test itself, it is CAT adaptive. And that just means that the questions that you get served up change.
CAT, C-A-T?
Yes, like a cat.
Well.
But it means computer adaptive testing. And so that just means that the test will change as you answer the questions. Based on the way that you answer the question that they put on the screen, it will determine what the next question you're going to get is. It may change the level of difficulty. It may change the topic, things like that.
So kind of like performance-based.
Right. Absolutely. And then, you have your set number of questions. And it doesn't really matter if you're an RN student or a PN student. When it comes to taking the NCLEX, that process is the same. Everybody's going to get 85 as a minimum, and then the test could go to 150 as a maximum. And so if you are a visual person and you need like a visual, pretend like there's a line for each client need category. So you don't just have this one passing standard line that you're trying to meet. There is a line for every client need category.
8 lines.
8
boom,
lines.
Boom, boom, boom,
boom,
boom,
boom. Yep. And so you get a question. You have no idea what client need category this question is going to satisfy, but the NCLEX people are very well aware. And so you take this question, you answer it, you get it right. And so it moves your little dot on the line, right? And it moves your little dot. Well, the issue is that each question you get also is weighted differently. So you have different levels of difficulty for every question that you're taking. And so just because you got it right doesn't mean that it just moved you way down the line, right? Or even if you got it incorrect, it doesn't mean that it just pushed you far back on the line. And so every single question that you get, you're basically playing a game with 8 different client need categories, with 8 different lines, and your goal is no matter how many questions you have to take, you want to be above the passing standard for all of those lines.
And that means you passed.
Done. That's right. You passed. And so it's a little difficult to, start thinking about the scoring system and lines, logit, passing standard. But the goal here is that the more you work on getting questions fully right, not only will you pass, you'll pass in fewer questions. And so again, it doesn't matter how many questions you have to take, but we love doing that at Hurst Review, really showing students how to not only get the question right, but get it all the way right. Mm-hmm. So that way you don't have to spend so much time relying on partial credit, that you got the full credit for that question. And the more questions you get full credit for, the fewer you have to take.
That's right.
So that's another confidence builder and help to decrease some of that anxiety that students have about the NCLEX.
Yeah. And there's, you mentioned different weights with different questions, and there's different question types too. So we're going to save the question types because There's a lot. Select all
Yeah.
that apply, multiple choice.
Tons.
Yeah. Bow tie, all drag and drop. There's a lot of different options out there. So we're going to save that for a future episode. Be sure to tune in to that episode. It might help understand, a little bit more about these 85 to 150 questions and what these client need categories, are looking for in asking and testing, not so you can analyze the test, but just so that way you have like a foundational knowledge base and something to kind of go off of, and then come back and re-listen to this episode. Because I think having those two paired together are really going to answer a lot of the questions that you guys are obviously, out searching for resources and for answers to. So we're happy that you found Nursing Navigator, and we're just going to keep giving you the juicy nuggets that you're looking for. It's all about the passing standard.
Yeah.
And I know when we do practice questions and teach and break it down, even in our student workbook, there's call outs of like the client need categories. So every single question falls into one of 8 client need categories.
That's right. And so when you're taking your exam, it doesn't tell you that either. It's not going to say, hey, this question that you're taking right now is to go to satisfy the client need category of pharmacological therapies or reduction of risk. It never tells you that. And I hear, we get a lot of feedback from students where they have tried to analyze their NCLEX while they take it. And we're like, friend, don't do that. Like, there's no point.
There's no point.
There's no point. It's like, you're not there to analyze the test. Just take it. Like,
the
let's
test is
take it.
analyzing you,
That's right,
not the other way around. So let the NCLEX lady do her job.
That's right.
And don't think that you can outsmart the NCLEX lady. Just focus on the information that's given to you on the screen to answer the question that best fixes the problem and keeps the client alive.
That's right. And so I guess a helpful tip here too is that sometimes the question may specifically mention a drug. Just because it specifically mentions a drug does not automatically make that question from pharmacological therapies. It doesn't mean that might be going to satisfy that client need category. It really is also about, what did they ask you? Did they ask you more about something about the client? Or did they ask you something specifically about that drug? Also, we've gotten feedback from students saying, I got this many case studies, or I got this many select all that apply. Again, you're analyzing the test there, and that doesn't bear any, weight as far as trying to determine if you pass or not. So just take the exam, and, that's one less thing that creates anxiety that sometimes students do. So let's get rid of that.
I see that a lot on, whether it's Facebook groups or Reddit feeds where people are saying, okay, I just walked out of the testing center and I had, this many bow ties, this many,
Right.
And does that mean I passed? Or I see a lot, which really is kind of where we got the inspiration for today's episode, to where, my test shut off at 85 questions. We already have played fact or fiction, but if your test shuts off at 85 questions, does that mean you passed?
We wish that's what it meant, because, then if it happened that way and that was true, you would automatically know. You would not have to wait. Nobody would be trying to do quick results or the Pearson VUE trick, which, by the way, friends, is not an actual thing from Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE will tell you it's not real. But, there would be no need for that if that was the case. And so when you're taking your exam, if your test cuts off at 85, it could go either way. It means that either you have satisfied all the client need categories, you're above the passing standard for all of them, no need for the NCLEX to ask you any more questions, you're done, you passed. Or it could mean that you've fallen below the passing standard in one or more of those categories, and there's no need for them to continue asking you any more questions either, and you've not passed. And so I think a misconception there is that sometimes candidates think, oh, if my test cuts off at 85 and I was unsuccessful, then that means I bombed it. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you bombed it. It's about each category. You could have been above the passing standard for 7 and below the passing standard for one of them. And if you fell too far below in that one category, they're not going to ask you any more questions.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. So I think maybe a really good takeaway for, our listeners is do the analysis. I know on our dashboard, our student dashboard that we offer with any of our Hearst Review products, they're able to track their progress when it comes to all of the client need categories. So if there's one that you're finding yourself that you're maybe really struggling with or that you're constantly scoring lower on, our platform allows you to isolate QBank questions that fall within that client need category. So that way you can read through the rationales and really practice those study techniques and pay attention to keywords and questions to build up your confidence, but also to understand those questions a little bit more. That way, when it comes to the passing standard line, you can work out those certain muscles.
That's right.
Because all it takes, like Ashley just said, is not meeting the passing line standard for one of the 8 or more, 2 of the however many, to be unsuccessful. And just another resource that we provide to our students with a Hearst account is their scoring report after a practice or readiness exam, which is going to look very familiar if you have taken the NCLEX and have been unsuccessful.
So the scoring report gives you a breakdown of the client need categories, and it kind of just gives you some information about each one of them. It may say, types of content that may have been pulling from. And then on the other side, it will tell you if you were above, near, or below the passing standard for each of those. Now, you only get a scoring report if you were unsuccessful.
With the actual NCLEX test.
Right, with the NCLEX. Now, with Hearst Review, you're going to get a scoring report no matter how you do. You could hit it out of the park. Like, you could have nailed the practice exam.
Run.
That's right. Grand slam it. I mean, you could have done so excellent. We're still going to give you a scoring report.
That's
right.
why we provide it with any of our student accounts, whether you're a live and stream next student of ours, RN or PN, you're still going to have that available. So use that as a resource in your prep time as you're preparing and as you're studying. And before you go sit down for the first time, know how you're trending in those areas. And it's not like when you go back to retest that you're only going to retest in the client need category that maybe you didn't perform well in.
Exactly. And so I think that's another thing too, is that sometimes students don't understand that if they are in that situation where they have to retest, the NCLEX isn't keeping track of that previous exam result and say, oh, okay, so we were below the standard in this one or these 3. That's where our focus is going to be today. Now, we still have to prove that we are able to, be above the passing standard on all of the client need categories. So a retake is a fresh start. So it's basically like you never took it to begin with. We're just starting over.
We're starting over. And sometimes maybe that's a good mindset to have when it comes to the 86 question, even though you're not technically starting over. You're still sitting in the facility, but there's that probably moment where you're holding your breath a little bit when you select your answer for question 85 and you press next because you know that you're going to have one of 2 options. You're either going to have another question pop up, that's question number 86, or you're going to have your thank you. You may now gather your belongings and head back. We'll let you know and
get out. Time to go right now.
So we have one of 2 options. But when it gets to question 86, don't panic. We do not want you to start spiraling. We don't want you to start analyzing the test. We want you to gather yourself, take a minute, breathe, and know that the test just needs more data. The good news is you haven't failed it yet, and you also haven't passed it. So it's kind of like a little bit of that reset, even though it has all the historical data. But that could maybe be for those of you that panic or, really start to freak out. Just take a minute for yourself, gather your thoughts, and know that, okay, I'm still in the game. they haven't kicked me out yet,
Yeah.
whether it's good or bad, but I'm still here and there's still hope for a successful attempt.
That's right. I think that probably would be a really good place to take a break. Breaks at the NCLEX, you are allowed to take a break whenever you choose. They do have those pre-planned breaks throughout, but that would just really be a good time to raise your hand. Make eye contact with the people at the testing center, just to go and regather yourself. Because like you said, it really means that you haven't failed yet. Because if you had already, failed, you'd be done. And so go gather yourself, go back and sit down, because it may only be one more question.
It may be.
It may be.
Because at that point, it can shut off at any question.
Point. That's right. Any question in between. And so every question that you get after that really is just another chance. You can start thinking about it that way. I'm not done yet. I haven't failed yet. This is another chance for me to keep showing them that I'm safe. Let me show them that so they can gather enough data so I can get out of here.
That's really all that matters. It kind of is giving me like overtime vibes a little bit, in sporting events. Once we get through, I'm going to act like I know baseball here. How many innings are in baseball?
9.
9? Okay, so once we get through all 9 innings, if we're tied, you just get free baseball. You get extra innings.
You do. Yep.
And maybe that question 86, where you're recommending take a break, that's our stretch. That's our 7th inning stretch.
Yep.
That's our, okay, we're taking a timeout. We're tied at a football game. We're going into overtime.
Yep.
And like you said, it could shut off at any point. So you could go into overtime maybe like once, or you go, they score, you score, they score, you score. And we just go all the way to the end until they shut the lights off in the stadium, AKA 150 questions.
I love it.
And then you have to wait for your results then.
And if it takes the whole test, then it just takes the whole test. I think that a lot of students, they just focus on that question 85 thing. Like, I got to take just 85 questions. And, I can understand how that might make you feel like internally, but it's not a bragging point really, because people like to try to use it as one, but your employer is not going to ask you during your interview, well, tell me how many questions you took. And I'm going to give you a, $2 raise per hour because you only took 85 questions. There's no prize.
Martha brought up a similar point when we talked about retaking the NCLEX with confidence. She was never asked, did you pass on your first try?
That's
or
right.
How many times did you take it?
Right.
At the end of the day, you've proven that you're going to be a safe nurse. And that's why we want to help you get there. This whole episode, we can harp on and on about it's just gathering more data. It's just gathering more data. But really, that's all it's doing.
It is.
But I think some key takeaways for our listeners are, don't try to outwit the NCLEX lady.
Yeah.
There's no need to analyze the test. Just let the test analyze you and your answers. Answer the question that's right in front of you.
Right.
And take it one question at a time, whether that gets you to 85, 86, 92,
95,
132,
149.
or 150. Just know that you're still in the game. And all the test is doing is gathering a little bit more data, one question at a time, to see where you fall on that passing standard line. And the next time someone tells you that hitting 86 questions is a bad sign, you can just politely smile at them and say, that's okay. I listen to the Nursing Navigator, and I know it's not the end of the world. Until next time, future nurses,
current nurses,
and retired nurses, thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Navigator by Hearst Review. Cue it.
Guiding you through from school to the floor, nursing news, careers, and so much more. Learning, growing, passing the test. With Nursing Navigator, you'll be your best. Nursing Navigator's here.